Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Chapter 22. Maitreya Uvacha Janeshu Prakrunat Prutula Vikramam Tatropajagmur Munayas Chatvaras Surya Varchasaha. The great sage Maitreya said, while the citizens were thus praying to the most powerful King Prthu, the four Kumaras, who were as bright as the sun, arrived on the spot. Tamstu Siddhashwaran Raja Vyom no Vataratorchisha Lokana Papan Kulvanan Sanugo Chashtalakshitan. Seeing the glowing effulgence of the four Kumaras, the masters of all mystic power, the king and his associates could recognize them as they descended from the sky. Taddarshanodgatan pranan pratyadit surivottitaha sasadasyanugo vainya indriyesho gunaniva. Seeing the four Kumaras, Prthu Maharaja was greatly anxious to receive them. Therefore, the king, with all his officers, very hastily got up, as anxiously as a conditioned soul whose senses are immediately attracted by the modes of material nature. Govaradhyantritah sambhyah prashrayanata kandharaha vidivat pujayaschakre gruhitardhyarhanasanan. When the great sages accepted their reception according to the instructions of the Shastras and finally took their seats offered by the king, influenced by the glories of the sages, immediately bowed down. The king immediately bowed down. Thus he worshipped the four Kumaras. Tatpadashauchasalilair marjitalakabandhanaha tatra shilavatam vruttam acharan manayanniva. After this, the king took the water which had washed the lotus feet of the Kumaras and sprinkled it over his hair. By such respectful actions, the king, as an exemplary personality, showed how to receive advanced personality. How to receive a spiritually advanced personality. Hatakasana asinan Swadhishneshviva pavakan Shraddha Samyama Samyuktaha Pritah Praha Bhavanagra Pritah Praha Bhavagrajan. The four great sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and when they were seated on the golden throne, they appeared just like fire blazing on an altar. Maharaja Prthu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows. पृथुरुवाच अहो आचरितं किं मे मङ्गलं मङ्गलायनाः यस्य वो दर्शनं ह्यासीद् दुर्दर्शाणां शयोगिभिः. King Prthu spoke, "My dear great sages, auspiciousness personified, it is very important for even the mystic yogis to see you. Indeed, you are very rarely seen. I do not know what kind of pious activity I performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty. किं तस्य दुर्लभतरम् इह लोके परत्र च यस्य विप्रा प्रसीदन्ति शिवो विष्णुश्च सानुगाः." Any person upon whom the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are pleased can achieve anything which is very rare to obtain in this world as well as after death. Not only that, but one also receives the favor of auspicious Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, who accompany the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Naiva lakshayate loko lokan paryatatopiyan yata sarvadrusham sarva atmanam yesya hetavaha. Prthu Maharaja continued, "Although you are traveling in all planetary systems, people cannot know you just as they cannot know the Supersoul, although he is within everyone's heart as the witness of everything. Even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot understand the Supersoul. Adhana apite dhanyaha sadavo gruhamedhinaha yadgruha hyarhavar yambhut trunabhumishwaravaraha." A person who is not very rich is attached to the family life because a person who is not very rich and is attached to family life becomes highly glorified when saintly persons are present in his home. The master and the servants who are engaged in offering the exalted visitors water, a sitting place, and paraphernalia for reception are glorified, and home itself is also glorified. Vyalalaya vaitesh varikta kila sampadaha yadgruhastirtha padiya padatirtha vivarjitaha. On the contrary, even though full of all opulence and material prosperity, any householder's house where the devotees of the Lord are never allowed to come in and where there is no water for washing their feet is to be considered a tree in which all venomous serpents live. Swagatam vo dvijashreshta यद्व्रतानि मुमुक्षवः चरन्ति श्रद्धया धीरा बाला एव बृहन्ति च. Maharaja Prthu offered his welcome to the four Kumaras, addressing them as the best of the Brahmanas. He welcomed them, saying, "From the beginning of your birth, you strictly observed the vows of celibacy, and although you are experienced in the path of liberation, you are keeping yourself just like small children. Kachinna kushalam nata indriyartartavedinam vyasanavapa etasmin patitanam swakarmabhihi." Prthu Maharaja inquired from sages about the persons entangled in this dangerous material existence because of their previous actions. Could such persons, whose only aim is sense gratification, be blessed with any good fortune? Bhavatsu kushala prashna atma rameshu neshyate kushala yatra na santi mativruttayah. Prthu Maharaja continued, "My dear sirs, there is no need to ask about your good and bad fortune because you are always absorbed in spiritual bliss. The mental concoction of the auspicious and inauspicious does not exist in you. Tadaham कृतविश्रम्भः सुहृदो वस्तपस्विनां सम्पृच्छे भव एतस्मिन् क्षेमः केनाञ्जसा भवेत्." I am completely assured that personalities like you are the only friends for persons who are blazing in fire of material existence. I therefore ask you how in this material world we can very soon achieve the ultimate goal of life. Vyaktamatmavatam Bhagavanatma bhavanah Swanamanugrahaye mam Siddharupi charatyajah. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always anxious to elevate the living entities who are his parts and parcels, and for their special benefit, the Lord travels all over the world in the form of self-realized persons like you. Maitreya Uvacha Prutostatsuktamakanya Saram Srushtumitam Madhu Smayamana Iva Pritya Kumaras Pratyuvachah. The great sage Maitreya continued, "Thus Sanat Kumara, the best of the celebrates, after hearing the speech of Prthu Maharaja, which was meaningful, appropriate, full of precise words, and very sweet to hear, smiled with full satisfaction and began to speak as follows. Sanat Kumara Uvacha Sadhu Prushtam Maharaja Sarvabhuta Hitatmana Bhavata Vidusha Chapi Sadhunam Matiridhrishi. Sanat Kumara said, "My dear King Prthu, I am very nicely questioned by you. Such questions are beneficial for all living entities, especially because they are raised by you, who are always thinking of the good of others. Although you know everything, you ask such questions because that is the behavior of saintly persons. Such intelligence is befitting your position. Sangamah kalu sadhunam उभयेषां च सम्मतः यत्सम्भाषणसम्प्रश्नः सर्वेषां वितनोतिशम्. When there is a congregation of devotees, their discussions, questions and answers becomes conclusive to both the speaker and the audience. Thus, such a meeting is beneficial for everyone's real happiness. अस्त्येव राजन् भवतो मधुद्विषः पादारविन्दस्य गुणानुवादने गतिर्दुरापा विदुनोति नैष्टिकी कामं कषायं मलमन्तरात्मनः. Sanat Kumara continued, My dear king, you already have an inclination to glorify the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such attachment is very difficult to achieve, but when one has attained such unflinching faith in the Lord, it automatically cleanses lustly desires from the core of the heart. शस्त्रेष्वियानेव सुनिश्चितो नृणां क्षेमस्य क्षेमस्य सद्ग्रग्विमृशेषु हेतुः सद्ग्विमृशेषु हेतुः क्षेमस्य सदर्ग्यविमृशेषु हेतुः असंग आत्मव्यतिरिक्त आत्मनि दृढारतिर्ब्रह्मणि निर्गुणे च या. It has been conclusively decided in the scriptures, after due consideration, that the ultimate goal for the welfare of human society is detachment from bodily concept of life and increased and steadfast attachment for the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental beyond the modes of material nature. Sa shraddaya bhagavad-dharmacharyaya jignasaya-dhyatmika-yoga-nishtaya yogeshwaropasanaya cha nityam punyashravah kataya punyaya cha. Attachment for the Supreme can be increased by practicing devotional service, inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, applying Bhakti Yoga in life, worshipping the Yogeshwara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by hearing and chanting about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These actions are pious in themselves. Artendriya ramasa goshtyatrushnaya tatsammatanamaparigrahena cha viviktaruchya paritosha atmani vina harer gunapiyushapanat. One has to make progress in spiritual life by not associating with persons who are simply interested in self-gratification and making money. Not only such persons, but one who associates with such persons should be avoided. One should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. One can thus elevated by being disgusted with the taste of one can be thus elevated by being disgusted with the taste of sense enjoyment. Ahimsaya paramahamsya smrutya mukunda charitragyasīdhuna yamairakamayirniyamaishapyanindhaya nirihaya dvandvatitikshaya cha. A candidate for spiritual advancement must be non-violent, must follow in the footsteps of great acharyas, must always remember the nectar of pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must follow the regulative principles without material desire, and while forming the regulative principles should not blaspheme others. A devotee should lead a very simple life and not be disturbed by the duality of opposing elements. He should learn to tolerate them. Harermuhuttatparakarnapura gunabidhanena nijrumbamaanaya bhaktya hyasangasadasatya Bhaktya hyasanga sadasatyanatmani sya ya nirgune brahmani chanjasaratihi. The devotee should gradually increase the culture of devotional service by constant hearing of transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These pastimes are like ornamental decorations on the ears of devotees. By rendering devotional service and transcending the material qualities, one can easily be fixed in transcendence in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yada ratir brahmani naishtiki puman acharyavan jnana viragaram hasa dahatya viryam hrudayam jivakosham panchatmakam yonimivotitognihi. Upon becoming fixed in this attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the spiritual master and by awakening knowledge and detachment, the living entity situated within the heart of the body and covered by the 5 elements burns up his material surroundings exactly as fire arising from wood burns the wood itself. Dagdashayo mukta samastatadguno naivatmano bahirantarvichaste paratmanoryadvyavadhanam purastat swapneyata purushastadvinashe. When a person becomes devoid of all material desires and liberated from all material qualities, he transcends distinctions between actions executed externally and internally. At that time, the difference between the soul and the supersoul, which are existing before self-realization, is annihilated. When the dream is over, there is no longer a distinction between the dream and the dreamer. Atmanamindriyartam cha param yadubhayorapi satyashaya upadhau vai puman pashyati nanyadha. When the soul exists from self-gratification, he creates different desires, and for that reason he becomes subjected to designations. But when one is in the transcendental position, he is no longer interested in anything except fulfilling the desires of the Lord. Nimitte sati sarvatra जलादावपि पूरुषः आत्मनश्च परस्यापि भिदां पश्यति नन्दया. Only because of different causes does a person see a difference between himself and others, just as one sees the reflection of the body appearing differently manifest on water, on oil, or in a mirror. इन्द्रियैर्विषयाकृष्टैर् आक्षिप्तं ध्यायतां मनः चेतनां हरते बुद्धेः स्तम्भस्तोऽयमिव हृदात्. When one's mind and senses are attracted to the sense objects for enjoyment, the mind becomes agitated. As a result of continually thinking of sense objects, one's real consciousness almost becomes lost, like the water in the lake that gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its bank. Prashyatyanusmrutischittam ज्ञानभ्रंशः स्मृतिक्षये तद्रोदं कवयः प्राहुर् आत्मापह्नवमात्मनः. When one deviates from this original consciousness, he loses the capacity to remember his previous position or recognize his present one. When remembrance is lost, all knowledge acquired is based on false foundation. When this occurs, learned scholars consider that the soul is lost. Natah parataro loke पुंसस्वार्थव्यतिक्रमः यदध्यन्यस्य प्रेयस्त्वम् आत्मानः स्वव्यतिक्रमात्. There is no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. Artendriyartabhidyanam sarvartapahvavo runam Bramshito jnana vijnanad dhena vishati mukyatam. For human society, constantly thinking of how to earn money and apply it for sense gratification brings about the destruction of everyone's interests. When one becomes devoid of knowledge and devotional service, he enters into species of life like those of trees and stones. न कुर्यात् कर्हिचित् सङ्गं तमस्तीव्रं तितीरिषुः धर्मार्थकाममोक्षाणां यदत्यन्तविघातकम्. Those who strongly desire to cross the ocean of nescience must not associate with the modes of ignorance, for hedonistic activities are the greatest obstructions to realization of religious principles, economic development, regulated sense gratification, and at last liberation. Tatrapi moksha evartha आत्यन्तिकतयेष्यते त्रैवर्ग्योऽर्तो यतो नित्यं कृतान्तभयसंयुतः. Out of the four principles, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, liberation has to be taken very seriously. The other three are subject to destruction by the stringent law of nature, death. Pare vare cha ye bhava gunavyatikaradhanu न तेषां विद्यते क्षेमम् ईश विध्वंसिताशिताम्. We accept as blessings different states of higher life, distinguishing them from lower states of life. But we should know that such distinctions exist only in relation to the interchange of the modes of material nature. Actually, these states of life have no permanent existence, for all of them will be destroyed by the Supreme Controller. तत्त्वं नरेन्द्र जगतामत तस्युषां च तस्त्युषां च देहेन्द्रियासुधिशनात्मभिरावृतानां यः क्षेत्रवित्तपतया हृदि विश्वगाविः प्रत्यक्षकास्ति भगवांस्तमवेहि सोऽस्मि. Sanat Kumara advised the king, therefore, my dear King Prthu, try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is living within everyone's heart, along with individual soul, in each and every body, either moving or not moving. The individual souls are fully covered by gross material body and subtle body made of life, air, and intelligence. यस्मिन्निदं सरसदात्मतया विभाति माया विवेकविदुतिस्रजिवा हि बुद्धिः तं नित्यमुक्तपरिशुद्धविशुद्धतत्त्वं प्रत्यूढकर्मकलिलप्रकृतिं प्रपद्ये. The Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself as one with the cause and effect within his body, but one who has transcended the illusionary energy by deliberate consideration, which clears the misconception of a snake for a rope and can understand the Paramatma and can understand that the Paramatma is eternally transcendental to the material creation and situated in pure eternal energy. Thus, the Lord is transcendental to all material contamination. Upon him only one must surrender. Unto him only one must surrender. Yat pada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya karmashayam gratita mudgha यत्पादपङ्कजपलाशविलासभक्त्या कर्माशयं ग्रथितमुद्घ्रतयन्ति सन्तः तद्वन्नरिक्तमतयो यतयोऽपि रुद्ध स्तोत्रोगणास्तमरणं भज Vasudevam. The devotees who are always engaged in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord can very easily overcome hard-knotted desires for fruitive activities. Because this is very difficult, the non-devotees, the jnanis and the yogis, although trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Kruchro mahaniha bhavarnavamullapesham shadvargana kramasukhena titirshanti. Tattvam harer bhagavato भजनीयमङ्घ्रिं कृत्वोडुपं व्यसनमुत्तरधुस्तरार्णम्. The ocean of nescience is very difficult to cross because it is infested with many dangerous sharks. Although those who are non devotees undergo severe austerities and penances to cross that ocean, we recommend that you simply take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are like boats for crossing the ocean. Although the ocean is difficult to cross, by taking shelter of his lotus feet, you will overcome all dangers. मैत्रेय उवाच स एवं ब्रह्मपुत्रेण कुमारेणात्ममेधसा दर्शितात्मगतिः सम्यक् प्रशस्योवाच तं नृपः. The great sage Maitreya continued, being thus enlightened in complete spiritual knowledge by the son of Brahma, one of the Kumaras who was complete in spiritual knowledge, the king worshipped them in the following words. Rajovacha kruto menugrahah purvam harinartanukasmipa kampina harinartanukampina tamapadayitum brahman bhagavan yuyamagataha. The king said, O Brahmana, O powerful one, formerly Lord Vishnu showed me his causeless mercy, indicating that you would come to my house, and to confirm that blessing, you have all come. Nishpaditascha karsnyena bhagavadbhartrunalubhihi sadhushchishtam hi me sarvam atmana saha kim dade. My dear Brahmana, you have carried out the order thoroughly because you are also as compassionate as the Lord. It is my duty, therefore, to offer you something, but all I possess are but remnants of food taken by great saintly persons. What shall I give? Pranadhara sutta brahman gruhascha saparichadaha rajyam balam mahikesha iti sarvam niveditam. The king continued, therefore, my dear Brahmanas, my life, wife, children, home, furniture, and household paraphernalia, my kingdom, strength, land, and especially my treasury are all offered unto you. Sainapatya cha rajyam cha dandanetrutvam cha sarvalokadipatyam cha vedashastra vidarhati. Since only a person who is completely educated according to the principles of Vedic knowledge deserves to be the commander of chief, ruler of state, the first to chastise and the proprietor of the whole planet, Prthu Maharaja offered everything to the Kumaras. Swameva brahmano bhunkte swam vatse swam dadati cha tasyaivanugrahennannam bhunjate kshatriyadayaha. The Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras eat their food by virtue of the Brahmanas' mercy. It is the Brahmanas who enjoy their own property, clothe themselves with their own property, and give charity with their own property. Yairidhrishi bhagavato gatiratmavada ekantato nighamibhih pratipaditanah tushyantvabrkaruna swakrutena nityam ko nama tat pratikaroti vinodapatram. Prthu Maharaja continued, how can such persons who have rendered unlimited service by explaining the path of self realization in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and whose explanations are given for our entitlement with complete conviction and Vedic evidence be repaid except by folded palms containing water for their satisfaction? Such great personalities can be satisfied only by their own activities, which are distributed amongst human society out of their unlimited mercy. Maitreya Uvacha Ta Atmayogapataya Adirajena Pujitaha Shilam Tadhiyam Shamsantaha Ke Bhavan Mishatam Runam. The great sage Maitreya continued, being thus worshipped by Maharaja Prthu, the four Kumaras, who were masters of devotional service, became very pleased. Indeed, they appeared in the sky and praised the character of the king, and everyone observed them. Vainyastu dharmo mahatam samstityadhyatma shishyaya shikshaya. Vainyastu dharmo mahatam samstityadhyatma shikshaya aptakamamivatmanam mena atmanyavastitaha. Amongst great personalities, Maharaja Prthu was the chief by virtue of his fixed position in relation to spiritual enlightenment. He remained satisfied as one who has achieved all success in spiritual understanding. Karmani cha yata kalam yata desham yata bhalam yatochitam yata vittam akarod brahmasat krutam. Being self-satisfied, Maharaja Prthu executed his duties as perfectly as possible according to the time and his situation, strength and financial position. His only aim in all his activities was to satisfy the absolute truth. In this way he duly acted. Palam brahmani samyasya vinirpang vinir vinir vinirvipanga samahitaha karmadhyaksham cha manvana atmanam prakruteh param. Maharaja Prthu completely dedicated himself to an eternal servant, to be an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transcendental to material nature. Consequently, all the fruits of his activities were dedicated to the Lord, and he always thought of himself as the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of everything. Gruheshu vartamane nopi sasamrajyashriyanvitaha nasanjatendriyarteshu niraham sati rarkavat. Maharaja Prthu, who was very opulent due to the prosperity of his entire empire, remained at home as a householder, since he was never inclined to utilize his opulences for the gratification of his senses. He remained unattached, exactly like the sun, which is unaffected in all circumstances. Evamadhyatmayogena कर्माण्यनुसमाचरन् पुत्रानुत्पादयामास पञ्चार्चिष्यात्मसम्मतान्. Being situated in the liberated position of devotional service, Prthu Maharaja not only performed all fruitive activities but also begot 5 sons by his wife Archi. Indeed, all his sons were begotten according to his own desire. Vijitashvam Drumakesham Haryaksham Dravinam Vrukam Sarvesham Lokapalanam Dadharaikah Pruturgunan. After begetting 5 sons named Vijitasva, Dhumrakesha, Haryaksha, Dravina, and Vriksha, Prthu Maharaja continued to rule the planet. He accepted all the qualities of the deities who governed all other planets. Gopitaya Jagatsrustehe Kale Svesvechyutatmakaha Manovagvruttibhis Saumyair Gunais Samrajyayan Prajaha. Since Maharaja Prthu was a perfect devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he wanted to protect the Lord's creation by pleasing the various citizens according to their various desires. Therefore, Prthu Maharaja used to please them in all respects by his words, mentality, works, and gentle behavior. Rojatyadhan Rojatyadhanamadheyam Rojatyadhanamadheyam Somaraja ivaparaha Suryavadhi srujan gruhnan pratapamscha bhuvo vasu. Maharaja Prthu became as celebrated a king as Somaraja, the king of the moon. He was also powerful and exacting, just like the sun god who distributes heat and light and at the same time exacts all the planetary waters. Durdarshastejase Vagnir Mahendra iva durjayah Titikshaya Dharitriva Dhyauriva Bhishtadonrunam. Maharaja Prthu was so strong and powerful that no one could disobey his orders any more than one could conquer fire itself. He was so strong that he was compared to Indira, the king of heaven, whose power is insuperable. On the other hand, Maharaja Prthu was also as tolerant as the earth in fulfilling various desires of human society. He was like heaven itself. Varshatisma yata kamam prajantya iva tarpayan samudra iva durbodaha satvena chalaradiva. Just as rainfall satisfies everyone's desires, Maharaja Prthu used to satisfy everyone. He was like the sea in that no one could understand his depths, and he was like Meru, the king of hills, in fixity of his purpose. Dharmaradiva Shikshayam Ashcharye Himavaniva Kureva iva Koshadyo Guptarto Varuno Yata. Maharaja Prthu's intelligence and education were exactly like that of Yamaraja, the superintendent of death. His opulence was comparable to the Himalaya mountains, where all valuable jewels and metals are stocked. He possessed great riches, like Kubera, the treasurer of the heavenly planets, and no one could reveal his secrets, for they were like demigod Varunas. Matarishveva sarvatma balena sahasaujasa avishahyataya devo bhagavan bhutaradiva. In this bodily strength, in his bodily strength, and in the strength of his senses, Maharaja Prthu was as strong as the wind, which can go anywhere and everywhere. As far as his intolerance was concerned, he was just like the all powerful Rudra expansion of Lord Shiva or Sadashiva. Kandarpa iva saundarye manasvi मृगराडिव वात्सल्ये मनुवनृणाम् प्रभुत्वे भगवानजः. In his bodily beauty, he was just like Cupid, and in his thoughtfulness, he was like a lion. In his affection, he was just like Swayambhuva Manu, and his ability to control, he was like Lord Brahma. बृहस्पतिर्ब्रह्मवादे आत्मवत्वे स्वयं हरिः भक्त्या गोरु भक्त्या गोरुविप्रे भक्त्या गोरुविप्रेक्षु भक्त्या गुरुविप्रेक्षु विश्वक्सेनानुवर्तिषु ह्रिया प्रश्रयशीलाभ्याम् आत्मतुल्यः परोधमे. In his personal behavior, Prthu Maharaja exhibited all good qualities, and in the spiritual knowledge, he was exactly like Brihaspati. In self control, he was like the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. As far as his devotional service was concerned, he was a great follower of devotees who were attracted to the cow protection and the rendering of service to the spiritual master and the Brahmanas. He was perfect in his shyness and in his gentle behavior, and when he engaged in some philanthropic activity, he worked as if he was working for his own personal self. कीर्त्योद्वगीयता पुंभिस्त्रैलोक्ये तत्र तत्रः प्रविष्टः कर्णरन्ध्रेषु स्त्रीणां रामः satamiv. Throughout the whole universe, in the higher, lower, and middle planetary systems, Prthu Maharaja's reputation was loudly declared, and all ladies and saintly persons heard his glories, which were as sweet as glories of Lord Ramachandra. Thus ends the chapter entitled Prthu Maharaja's meeting with the four Kumaras. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.